everybody. Does this work? It does. Excellent. Always slightly worried with one of these things. No. Yes. Okay, so my thing says I'm going to be telling you about how to find your most important users. And that's a little bit of a lie because as I was actually putting the presentation together for this, I realized I wanted to talk about something a little bit bigger than that, a little more general, which is how you actually get the users in the first place. And so I'm going to go through a little bit about sort of where I came from and the context for that, because I really believe that context is one of the most important things for advice. Someone I really respect, Paul Buchheit, the guy who invented Gmail, has this quote that gets bandied around a lot at Y Combinator, which is, advice is limited life experience plus overgeneralization. And I think that's really actually quite true. That's one of the major problems with receiving advice, even advice from really talented, well-meaning people, which is that if you don't understand the context for it, you can often misapply it. So I'm going to go through a lot of where I came to be where I am right now to give the context, and then talk a little bit about the actual how you identify those users and how you find them. All right, great. Wait. OK, perfect. So right out of college, the first thing I did was I started this company called Kiko Calendar. And Kiko was you can see it on the screen. It was Google Calendar, basically. It was a JavaScript calendar, probably the first one that was ever released. And we'd basically seen Gmail and said, there really should be a calendar that goes with this thing, which turned out that was A, true, and B, Google would build it. So it was a great experience. I learned a lot. I went through Y Combinator, actually. It was the beginning of my association with Y Combinator. It was the very first Y Combinator class with Reddit, with a couple other sites you probably haven't heard of that weren't as famous as Reddit, and like Kiko. And what we did wrong with Kiko is something that I think a lot of first-time people do wrong, which is we didn't use the calendar ourselves. And at no point during the production of this did we talk to anyone who actually uses a calendar either. And then third, and maybe most damningly, when someone asked us which calendar users are you going after, like who is this for? Is this for business calendar users? Is this for sorority girls who want to plan the most awesome party? Who is this for? We would say it's for everyone, which is the wrong answer. And in retrospect, I don't understand how we got as far as we did. We almost got 100,000 users for Kiko before we sold it on eBay. And we actually did. That was our exit. Successful exit. We sold it on eBay, and that was a really great experience. If you have a startup to sell, I really encourage the public auction process. It may be non-traditional, but it was a lot more fun than the normal backroom deal style. So we wound up selling it for about $250,000, which at the time seemed like just hilariously huge amount of money. Although in retrospect, once you took out taxes and fees, I wound up working for like $60,000 a year that year, which I guess was good, but it's not. It didn't seem so big when you actually did the math. And Kiko was great, but we really screwed up a bunch of times in the production of it, primarily around not being the user, not talking to the user, not identifying the user. And so we started our next thing. Our next thing, we went completely different direction. My co-founder, Justin, who was my co-founder on Kiko, had this, and it really was his idea, I have to say, because I would never have volunteered for this. He strapped that camera you can see on his head there, and he decided he would broadcast himself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, yes, even in the bathroom, for everyone in the entire world to see. And he decided that he would basically, we were going to create a new form of basically reality TV. We were going to become reality TV show producers and produce this new form of reality television for the internet. This turned out to be a bad idea. We're pretty good at technology and pretty good at building things. We're not actually reality TV show producers. And so we wound up turning Justin TV into more of a platform, which worked pretty well because, unlike with Kiko, we did talk to our users. We knew who our users were. In fact, we were our user because the platform that we wound up releasing was the platform we built for Justin. And that was immensely more successful than we ever were with Kiko. Justin TV got to almost, I think at its peak, we reached about 60 million monthly uniques, and 30 million of them actually came to the site, which was amazing. But the problem was we sort of fell into it, and it wasn't very designed, and we really didn't really know where we were going with it. And it kind of stopped growing. We kind of hit a market cap, and we didn't know what to do from there. And so we started 2 Skunkworks projects inside of Justin TV. The first one was Justin TV Mobile, which you might have heard of because it wound up getting spun off and turning into Social Cam. And the second one was Justin TV Gaming, which wound up turning into Twitch and basically taking over the whole company. And Justin TV Gaming was my baby, and it was sort of through the Justin TV Gaming process I wound up becoming the CEO of Twitch. I think the most crucial thing we did when we started on Twitch is I was a user. The reason I was passionate about Twitch in the first place was the content I liked on Justin TV. It was gaming content. And so what we did with Twitch was we actually called something like 40 different broadcasters on the phone and asked them, do you use Twitch? Why not? Do you use, what else do you use? What could we do to make you switch? And then when we built what they told us to build, which sounds really obvious, but it's actually really important because so many people say they listen to users. And if you ask them, okay, honestly, how many users have you talked to in the past week? The answer will be 0. How many in the past month? 1. And it's easy to say you listen to users. In practice, it's really hard to go through all the work of doing it because you're impatient to get started working on things. And so Twitch has become much bigger than I thought it would originally. We're at about 45 million monthly uniques now. We just had this awesome movie released on our site with Valve. There's been a really cool cultural phenomenon recently called Twitch Plays Pokemon, which if you haven't checked it out, there's a Wikipedia article. I recommend you go read the Wikipedia article because it's the foundation of a new religion on a video game. It's kind of incredible. Praise the Helix. But I don't have time to get into it here to take the rest of the talk to explain what Twitch Plays Pokemon is. Maybe some other time. At any rate, it's been really awesome. I've got to do a lot of really cool new things. And as a result of that, I've wound up doing a lot of work with Y Combinator. So Y Combinator, if you don't know what it already is, although I hope most of you do, it's a startup accelerator, probably really the first startup accelerator, in my opinion, the best startup accelerator. And I work for Y Combinator as a part-time partner. So a lot of what I'm going to be saying for the rest of the presentation is actually not based so much on the things I've learned in my direct work, although that's a big part of it. It's based on work that I've seen other people do and advice that I've given them and sort of getting to see that play out through dozens to, I think it's probably, at this point, it's 100 really early stage startups I've advised. So here are the 5 ways that I promised that are the only ways to get users. Actually, there's 6 on that screen. But I don't count sales because I don't know anything about sales because that's how you sell like enterprise software and how you sell really big things that require sales teams. And frankly, that's not really what I've done. So there are really 6 ways. But if you're building something for consumers and you aren't going to build a sales team, there's really only 5. So the claim I'm staking in the ground is that successful startups that grew some other way is a blank set. There are no startups that don't grow through one of these 5 ways as the only way they find users in the beginning. And one of the really important things about that is that each of these 5 ways have very different dynamics. And if you want any of them to work, you really have to commit yourself to making it happen. So advertising is the classic way to grow. It's sort of marketing 101. You will inform people your product exists by showing them advertising, and then they will show up and buy your product. This works awesome if your product sells for enough money per user that the equation works out. It's fun. It's basically a very equation-based thing. And it's all about optimizing your funnels, and it's all about reducing your cost per click and finding keywords to bid on. And there's been some really successful companies that have built themselves almost entirely on advertising as the growth mechanism. I mean, AOL, I think, is the most prominent one of these from the 90s, if you lived through that, where they just blanketed the country with CDs because that was how you got people to know your product existed. Match.com, right? Match.com does not have organic user growth. It is not a viral product. It does not. People don't want to link to Match.com from everywhere. Match.com grows because they buy advertising, and they do that very successfully. It's a really powerful and successful way to run that product. Netflix, same kind of thing, right? There isn't a powerful viral mechanism built into Netflix at its core. I mean, there's word of mouth, which is always good for your startup, but it's not fundamentally anything other than a balanced equation that keeps growing. I don't know anything about sales. It's not good for consumer software. Lots of big successful companies have obviously grown with sales. I have nothing more to say about it because I'm not an expert on it. A lot of people want to talk about having a viral product. Virality is sort of this holy grail for software products. But actually, most software products are, if you say we're going to grow virally, that's actually a way of saying we're not going to grow at all. Because your product, unless it's shaped fundamentally around being something you share, is not going to succeed through viral growth. So companies that grow through viral growth, Facebook is the obvious one that people think of, but actually Dropbox, for example, is a very viral product. It's inherently for sharing, right? Yes, you can sync your stuff, and that's good, but the really cool thing you can do with Dropbox, you can invite someone else to a shared folder, which is how Dropbox grows and how it's dynamically gets bigger every time it gets bigger, which is what you want for your product. And Uber, actually, hilariously enough, is also a viral product. It looks like something you'd have to go through advertising, but in fact, because you always take cab rides with your friends, you have to share Uber when you use it. Because, oh, don't worry, we're not going to flag a cab, I'm just going to call an Uber, makes Uber inherently viral. And that's a really cool thing about the product, but it's not something you can force. In all of these cases, if it wasn't a natural part of what it meant to use the product, tacking on viral growth things after the fact is basically going to fail you. So platforms has been called picking up pennies in front of a steamroller, with good reason. Most people who build things on platforms wind up getting crushed by them. So you can see this every time someone builds. Relevant to the last presentation, there was a dashboard for OS X that existed before OS X's dashboard that got crushed by the dashboard being implemented as part of the platform. And that's always a danger when you're building on someone else's platform for distribution. But platforms, of course, can be incredibly powerful. Just look at Zynga. If you find someone else's existing platform, sometimes you can ride that and become part of their proprietary platform. I generally think this is a really bad idea. You're at someone else's whim forever, but there are exceptions. The important exceptions for that is things like SEO. Right? Google has become such an assumed part of the internet that building something on that platform is really something that can make sense. Likewise, the App Store. So many people have built their businesses there. And the key is, if you're looking at a platform, is the platform owner's needs, are their needs aligned with your own? If their needs are to grow an ecosystem, and that's really the fundamental direction of the business, and they have no desire to suck you into their side of the ecosystem, this can work. That's not most platforms. This is something I can actually talk a little bit more about. So referral. By referral, I don't mean the Dropbox referrer program or something like that. By referral, I mean what YouTube did, and frankly, what Twitch has done, which is if you have great content and you have with a fan base, people will be hugely incentivized to get that linked to from everywhere on the web. But this is really something that primarily companies that have a two-sided market do, where you have a consumer and a producer, and the producer becomes incredibly incentivized to build your platform. And that's really been the core for Twitch's growth. We realized early on, we were talking to our users, that the broadcaster is really key. Wherever the broadcasters went, that's where the viewers would go too. That's where their fans would go. And so we focused a huge amount on just building the thing that will bring broadcasters to us. And I think PayPal is a really interesting example here. It's a non-media company that uses the same strategy. And PayPal actually grew via eBay in the beginning, very much because they had these sellers who really, 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 really wanted people to buy their things, and thus would push PayPal to wherever they went. And all they had to do was convert the sellers to get all the broadcasters, or to all the buyers. And then lastly, partnerships. So Twitch is kind of famous for its partnerships. We're on the PlayStation 4, we're on the Xbox One. That's been awesome. It has nothing to do with how we've grown, actually. I strongly recommend against any strategy that involves getting a partnership, because partnerships, if they're any good, come from big companies. Big companies move at a pace that is glacial compared to what you want to do as a startup. Every now and then, you get really lucky, and someone else is ready to bend over for you at the right moment, right when you want them to, and IBM enables the Microsoft operating system monopoly by effectively just handing it to them in that partnership. But you can't count on that. I mean, that is not the majority case. And so I really discourage companies from looking into that. Big companies diversify. This something goes back to another thing a speaker said earlier, which is, why aren't you using the Apple product process in this 4-person company? Well, it's not appropriate for a 4-person company. It's something that scales. It's important when you're at scale, but not important when you're small. Same thing is true for diversifying your user acquisition. At this point, Twitch does a lot of different things. Facebook does everything. Google does everything. They grow through every mechanism they can. But small companies can't afford to do that. And so I guess the big takeaway I have taken from Twitch is that the difference from what we did on Kiko and what we did on Justin TV, where we basically said, we're going to get everybody, and we're going to touch everyone in the entire world. On Twitch, we said, we're going to touch this one user. We're going to touch broadcasters, because they are the ones who are important for enabling this growth mechanism. And it was one growth mechanism and one user base. And that was the key to actually turning into a successful thing. Every time we tried to make something for everyone, we failed. And every time we tried to make something for the narrowest possible, live video broadcasting of video games only, and really just pro players in the beginning, is about as niche as you get. And yet, that works way better than building something for the entire world. So I guess that's really my takeaway. And I want to take any questions if anybody had anything they wanted to ask about.
Hey, will you come stand in the front of the stage for your question taking?
Yeah. Anybody? Yes.
So it looked like referrals, all those were the thing that really worked for Twitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was there something else that was a big key growth?
So for Twitch, referral growth has been the core of our growth from the very beginning. The way we measure our growth is basically, there's about 5,000 broadcasters on Twitch who really, really matter. And our goal is to grow that body of people. And we do that by reaching out and talking to them directly. And we do that by building a platform that they are interested in joining in the first place. And then when they join, they bring their entire fan base with us. And so every time we get a YouTube director to start broadcasting on Twitch, we win. And so that really has been our core growth mechanism. We do other things, but nothing else compares. Yeah?
Yeah, I was interested in what you said about how you called up the users and nobody ever does that.
Yeah.
And of course, there are people who are, sophisticated and not ethnographic, researchers who will hire for a lot of money. But there's also a huge pool of people who are professionally trained to call up people and ask them questions, and who are getting thrown out of work. And those people are called reporters. And I'm sort of wondering why, since there's supposedly this war for talent and nobody knows what the user, why don't people hire some of these unemployed reporters to call up users and ask them what they want?
I actually think reporters would make great marketing, sort of product management, product marketing people. Yeah.
Some companies do.
Some companies do that, apparently. we haven't hired any reporters for that. But one of the keys for actually making Twitch work in the beginning is I was the reporter. I was the person calling people up on the phone and learning from them. I was the programmer. I was the product manager. I was the director. And that's of sort of direct. I could control the direction of the company. And combining that all into one person is really, really important in the very beginning. But as you get bigger, actually, I would encourage reporters to go apply for product management positions. I think they probably have a lot of the skills that you'd really want. Yeah.
You said that saying something is going to grow virally is another way of saying it's not going to grow at all. And it seems like a lot of companies believe what you said, which is they believe that their product is inherently viral when it's not. What is the difference between the gold and the false gold in that instance? Can you point to some things that would help you distinguish?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. The question was, if people didn't hear it, how do you tell between whether your product can actually grow virally or not? if you don't add a share to Facebook button, is it still going to grow? Right? Like if you find yourself thinking, okay, we need more viral growth, I know, we'll add like a social media share button. You aren't a viral product, right? Like that. If you find yourself thinking we need to get people to use our product more often and then it will grow faster, then you might be a viral product, right? If just using the core product experience inherently shares or not, and that Facebook share like is actually that's the key tip-off that you're not viral.